Peace and blessings, everyone. How are you all doing today? My name is Rashad Staten, and it is a pleasure and honor this wonderful Monday to kick off the Youth Town Hall meeting presented by Baltimore City Public Schools. I have the honor and pleasure of serving as the Youth Engagement Specialist. And once again, we want to welcome you all for a wonderful convening where City Schools gets to talk directly to our student population in regards to our reopening plan, sharing objectives, and making sure that our young people, our scholars, are prepared and comfortable for the reopening of the school. So without further ado, again, welcome to City Schools Youth Town Hall meeting. And what we're going to do today is we're going to have a plethora of conversations that are centered around our young people. And we're going to be having guests, special guests as well, that's going to be joining us to provide answers and providing clarity as well. Today's town hall meeting is with the most recent decisions to start school year with virtual learning. The aim of this session is to share information and gather students' feedback on the district strategies and the expectations for school year 2021 and to capture student thoughts on their preparedness and needs related to continuing their education virtually and during this fall. Again, welcome to our students. Thank you all for joining us on your social media platforms. We want to welcome you all and thank you all for your patience and your willingness to stay committed, to stay engaged, and to stay mindful of yourselves, your peers, and your education, most importantly. In addition, I want to welcome and thank our families and our partners for their support, advocacy, and collaboration. Before we begin with today's Youth Town Hall, I want to provide an oversight or overview of how today's programming is going to go. We're going to begin to hear directly from City School CEO Dr. Santelises, who will present the district's reopening plan, which will then be followed by questions from our youth participants and discussions on next steps. During this portion, we will ask our audience that is viewing us right now on social media to join and add into your thoughts, your opinions, and your questions to put them into the chat section of the platform that you are joining us by. And before we begin started, I want to acknowledge my colleagues and other school leaders that are on today's virtual town hall. Before we begin with the presentation by Dr. Santelises and Chief John Davis. So without further ado, I am joined by other passionate, service-minded, school educational-related professionals. So without further ado, I want to give acknowledgments to our board commissioners that are representing us today that you will hear from in the latter of the program. We're gonna have joined by both Commissioner McFadden and our student board commissioner, Commissioner Kyrie Sykes. So before I begin and introduce Dr. S, I want to give acknowledgments and space for us to hear from Commissioner McFadden, who's going to do a brief introduction of himself, as well as our newly elected appointed school board commissioner, student board commissioner, Kyrie Sykes. So Commissioner McFadden, how are you? Pleasure.
I'm fine, Rashad, and it's good to be here with you and with your leadership in city schools leadership, but with you really engaging our young people and leading this discussion. I appreciate you and the team for inviting me. I'm not going to take up a lot of time. I'm eager to hear from our young people. I work with several young people and I mentor tons of young people throughout the city and the region. So I'm eager to hear more of our young people, more of the youth voices, because your voices are the most important in this conversation. So I'm ready to listen to you all, and I'm ready to hear what you all are thinking and how you're feeling and how we can best support you as we move forward this school year.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner McFadden. Thank you for always being a champion for education and leading with our young people in mind. You're greatly appreciated, recognized, and respected for all that you do in your service. And now I would like to give space and recognition to our newly appointed student board commissioner, rising senior at Parlance Dunbar High School, Student Board Commissioner Kyrie Sykes. How are you? All right. Commissioner Sykes, how are you doing? All right, we're having some technical difficulties, and later on, while we go through our introductions, we will reintroduce Student Board Commissioner Kyrie Sykes. We'll move on and also introduce another one of our colleagues that you'll be hearing from throughout today as well. That will be Dr. Anthony Pena, who is our manager of school operations. Dr. Pena, how are you today?
I'm well. So Rashad, it's good to be with the young people because they are the voice of the community. Without the young people, we don't have jobs. So it's good to see them here and live, and I'm excited to hear what they have to say. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I agree with you 100%. I agree with you 100%. Again, we were just briefly introducing ourselves. I am Rashad Staten, the Youth Engagement Specialist for Baltimore City Schools. We're also being joined by Commissioner McFadden, as well as Student Board Commissioner Kyrie Sykes. And without further ado, I would like to introduce our senior leadership of City Schools, our CEO of Baltimore City Public Schools, Dr. Santelises. How are you?
I am doing fine, Rashad. It is good to see you. So it's good to have Mr. Staten with us. It's good to see Commissioner McFadden. I know Commissioner Sykes is here, even with, we're going to work through some of the technical piece, and so that we can make sure we hear from him today too. Dr. Pena, who is joining us, and just the full staff, and most importantly, our young people. And I can't emphasize enough what all of you have said, and really just reiterate and reemphasize that this town hall is really the space where we want to hear from our young people about what they see in the plan, how their feedback influence the plan, and what they need us to know and work through as part of it, and for them to be part of the process, which I always appreciate. And I do need to give a shout out, Rashad, to you, because I don't think our young people often can know or see behind the scenes. And so I just want to say to the young people that you should know, even when you don't see me up front, you have an advocate in Rashad, who makes sure that we keep spaces for young people at the center of what we do. And so I want to thank you for the work that you do. And again, thank the young people for your resilience. This is a challenging time for us as a nation, as a city, frankly, as a global community right now, during not only the international pandemic, but also a period of protest against some of the racial unrest we've experienced, and even the young people in city schools who have been bold enough to share some of your own experiences and your own take on what is going on in your world today. So I want to thank you all. This is kind of the highlight of my day. And again, thank you, Commissioner McFadden, for joining us as well as Commissioner Sykes. And without further ado, do you want me to turn it back to you, Mr. Staten, or are we going to the PowerPoint?
So I'll do a quick.
Please.
So our young people that are joining us, our families, our school partners, educators, what we're about to begin with is a presentation of the district strategy, and Dr. Santelises will be presented, as well as our Chief John Davis. So give time this is our space of opportunity to provide you insight on the educational recovery plan, the district strategy, and after we present, we would like to hear from you all. So again, let's all build together, let's be informed together, and let's make sure that our young people are ready and prepared to reopen school and have a successful academic school year. So Dr. Santelises, I pass it over to you.
No, thank you very much. So just to get started, I think one of the things that is important for you all, for all the young people and other folks listening to know, is this slide is really just an overview of some of the core principles that we have used and tried to really keep in mind as we have been planning and putting this plan together. Really, you're part of each and every part of these plans should be reflective of feedback from young people. Health and safety, overwhelmingly, I heard from our students from the spring on that the concern about their health, but also the health of their families, their communities and neighbors was incredibly important. And so that is the driver. Student learning and that piece of making sure that you are not losing a step. So many young people are in the process of planning their futures, whether they're in middle school or high school, or frankly, even elementary. Equity, as I referenced earlier, we need to know and constantly keep in mind the needs of all students and to really hone in on those places where there are groups of students whose needs we have not met. And then also just the commitment to have fluidity, to change when we need to, and to continuously improve where we are with this. So that's how we're starting with that. You'll see the 3-phase framework. And as many young people know, matter of fact, I got a post on social media with a city school student asking, even as recently as 2 days ago, are we going back at all? And was concerned about that. And some of the reason why that struck me as a question is because I think it's a real example of how quickly the situations are changing. And so we've tried to keep in mind the 3 phases that you see here. As of now, we are beginning our school year with in phase 1, which is 100% virtual learning, but we are trying to make plans for possible small groups of students who'll be able to come in person as the conditions permit. We even had some of that in summer school. We had high school students, elementary students in small groups who actually even came out this summer for some virtual in-time, real-time learning. Phase 2 would be what we had hoped to do this fall, but again, conditions have not allowed us to start that way, and that is to have a mix of in-person and virtual learning, giving families the option of which one. We're not moving into the year in phase 2 yet, but that is a hope as the school year progresses and conditions allow, we would be able to do that. And then phase 3 we call a new normal, and that's long-term planning. How do we come to a place, what needs to be in place for us, for students to be able to experience a majority of in-person learning, still with some virtual components. This slide is just to give an overview of basically who did we talk to? Who did we get a chance to consult? You'll see one of the highlights on this slide is we did get responses through focus groups, through surveys from over 1,850 students. We are hoping to continue to increase that as the year moves on. We have had discussions about how do we make sure that we're continuing that engagement. And then you'll also see, I'll just draw attention, in addition to school leaders, teachers and staff, the reference to over 16,800 families that also responded and really are helping to inform what you're seeing now. And I'm trying to be mindful of time so that we get to student questions. You'll see some of the key takeaways here. I know sometimes when, I know for myself, when I'm the individual who is completing a survey, it quickly comes to me to say, well, what's everybody else saying about this? Again, you'll see all of the different groups on this slide just drawing attention to our student survey. And you'll see that there was even a mixture there of students who were not, and I have a little block to my bar, so I can't see it now. But you'll see it's about 48%, just under half of the students who responded were not comfortable coming back to the building, returning to their building, and then 43% were comfortable. So you'll see there was some split even among students, and some of that also played out with other stakeholders. I'm just drawing attention to students since this town hall specifically for our young people. Next slide. So with regard to some other key takeaways, what you'll see here is that with regard to a preference for all virtual, meaning 100% online, or that phase 1 that I referenced earlier, or hybrid, meaning maybe an A day, B day in school, and then the rest being virtual, or everyone back all in person. You'll see that there was some difference in different groups. This one does not have a breakout for students, but I would just draw your attention to families. You'll see that families were really kind of split between some kind of in-person as opposed to all virtual, and it varied across groups. But this gives you the chance to see that as well yourself. Next slide. Great. So with regard to our fall opening plan, again, as I reiterated, all schools in the district will open the school year virtually. What we are trying to do now, and we're working to do, is to make sure that every student, every young person who needs access to Wi-Fi, every young person who needs a device will be able to get a device to begin the school year, given we're starting virtually. The other piece we're working on is really working on how do we prioritize certain small groups of students being able to have some in-person instruction, some in-person interaction, even if it's smaller groups, similar to what we did over the summer when we had about 300 students come to school, socially distanced with masks, because they really did need that in-person touch. And then, as I referenced earlier, the rest of the slide just talks about or shows some of our considerations as we think about, all right, if we're starting all virtual, what are the things we have to think about if we're going to then try to add a hybrid option that would allow families and students to select, say, a week where 2 days would be in school and 3 days would be virtual. So that part of the plan lets you see that that's what we would move towards, but rest assured, we are working with the health department. We are working with epidemiologists, scientists from places like Morgan and Johns Hopkins to be able to do that safely, But for now, we're 100% virtual. So on the health and safety measures here, you'll see what we have outlined, the maintaining social distancing at all times, face coverings required, students staying in cohorts. And again, want to reemphasize that these would be measures we would put in place in either our small groups and or as we move to hybrid. You'll see regular cleaning and disinfecting, hand washing, and this piece about outdoor activity, really wanting, if possible, while the weather is still nice, at some point in the fall to be able to encourage outdoor activity for students. It was one of the things that young people who participated in summer programming really did appreciate. Being mindful of the time, I will continue to move through. You'll see some of the other safety measures that we are putting in place, physical barriers, staggering bathroom breaks. This just gives you an overall look because we really are taking the health and safety measures seriously. And a lot of this learning came from students like yourself and seeing what worked, what helped to keep people safe, and how we implement that. Next slide. Now, with regards to technology, as I referenced earlier, the big message for that is we still want to make sure that we are getting every young person who needs a device you can see here, that we've distributed more than 20,000 Chromebooks to date. We started with summer distribution, and we will shift back to school-based distribution. And then we're prepared to procure additional devices as necessary. We're also working, frankly, with a lot of community organizations and a number of young people who may even be a part of this call, but your colleagues, students who have mobilized around the need for more equitable access to quality internet for Baltimore City in general. I want to commend all of the young people who really have mobilized around that, are advocating not only for themselves, but for all of Baltimore City. And so that's getting traction in the interim. We purchased 10,000 hotspots for distribution to traditional schools. And again, I'm staying mindful of the time because I want to make sure that we get to your questions. Chief Davis, is this where you take over? Or
yeah.
Do I continue? All right. I will pass it over to Chief John Davis, our Chief of Schools, and he will continue. And like I said, we are keeping mindful of time so that we make sure we get student questions in, but I will turn it over to Chief Davis now.
Thank you, Dr. Santelises. Yes, I'm going to be quick. When you see different instructional models, we use two terms: synchronous, which really means live, right with the teacher, and asynchronous, which means students are working on their own and that instruction doesn't occur with the live teacher. So you'll see these two terms a decent amount, and it's just good for everyone to understand them. Synchronous is live and asynchronous is kind of independent. Office hours, right? When you see some of our instructional models, there should be time for students to work with teachers after they've had their normal class. And that's a time when students can ask questions, can get specific advice, can make sure they're up to date with everything that they need to do. And so you'll see that from time to time as well. Two of the models we're going to show everyone are the middle grades and the high school. And the middle grades look somewhat similar when you look from a traditional school model, but what I want all the young people to know is really two things in this, right? Even though you'll see 60 minutes of the normal instruction, that's going to have to be broken down. A lot of it will be whole group, maybe 30 to 45 minutes. But some of it is going to have to be independent work. Some of it will be in small groups. Some of it will be in platforms such as iReady, which is something that some of the young people might be used to. And again, we need to kind of switch up that hour so it's not just a constant 60 minutes of a teacher, right? Any type of instruction, and the young people know this, it's got to be varied, it's got to be quick. And so even though you see the 60 minutes, please know that we are absolutely working with our teachers so that we give you the best instruction during that time, and it's not just a monotonous 60 minutes. Similarly, you're going to see something for middle school and even the younger grades around SEL. SEL is social emotional learning, and that's just a good opening part of the day where we check in with everyone. But not only is it during the beginning of the day, but it's got to be throughout the day, where teachers will be working with students on things like self-awareness or self-management, or maybe compassion will be a theme. So there'll be different aspects of that throughout the day, even though you see the 15 minutes in the beginning. High school is very, very similar, right? It's a little bit longer for the high school students in a 5-period day. What I want to point out is that even though you don't see it here, Wednesdays will be a little bit different for our high schoolers. There'll be what we call intervention blocks, really intervention and enrichment, where students will go to different classes for a combination of small group learning or potentially enrichment if you're in an AP class. So Wednesdays will look a little bit different and will be tailored to the needs of students. It'll be different in a time frame as well, and that's why you see the Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday there at the top. So it's a normal schedule beyond that, and just like I talked about with the middle grades, we've got to make sure those 65 minutes are really tight, really varied for our young people. CTE instruction. This is going to be a challenge, and I just want to let everyone know that and be upfront about it. But at the same time, I can tell you that we are changing when it says scopes and sequences, that really means what's being taught. So when the young people see that, right, we're changing what is being taught to make sure that we prioritize all of the skills that you have to be certified for in order to get employment, right? We always hit that within a given school year, but we're really going to try to prioritize it even more, because if you're not going to be able to do some of the sawing with the electric saw that you see in the picture, right, we've got to make sure that you've got all the skills needed so that if you have to take some type of certification test. Similarly, we've got to make sure that you've got the right laptops so that you can take particular CTE courses. They might be a little bit more beefed up laptops, but we've got to make sure our CTE students have that as well. And then again, probably a third thing that you should know is that there are always CTE courses that go at different schools. So a young person might go to a school, say Vivian Thomas, but a same class might be given someplace else. And if it is, we're going to make sure our teachers are working together like that. Student advising. Our counselors are going to be another focus area during this upcoming year. Last year, we had individual student plans for about 4 of our grades. This year, all of our middle and high school students will have individualized plans. And it won't just be the counselors, it'll be teachers too that work on that. But there've got to be times when our counselors are working with students, especially on those Wednesdays, to make sure that students are on track, so that they set goals, so that they check in on those goals, so that really it's a week by week, month by month basis, where counselors are really in tune with what is going on with our young people in this virtual space. It's going to be really, really important. We're going to put time and energy into it. Extracurricular and enrichment opportunities. Yes, 2 things I want to point out for everyone here. One, there will be a district level resource page, because there's enrichment opportunities online and we want to make sure everyone knows about it. And then the second thing is we're working hard to give our schools guidance. So if they want to bring in small groups of students for different opportunities, then we want to make sure it's all safe, it's all done in a healthy way. And in the end, we can potentially bring in small groups of students, right? We still have some work to do on that, but that is a goal that we're working towards. Athletics. Since this was presented a couple of weeks ago, it's been updated, and we should have updated it, right? The state of Maryland has postponed the fall and winter sports. And so right now, that is the main situation, is that fall sports and winter sports are being postponed. And we'll see what the spring brings us. Hopefully we can have a smaller schedule for both, or for all of those kind of 3 groups of sports, spring, fall, and winter. But we'll continue with academic support, and we're working on having conditioning opportunities. Again, it's almost like those extracurricular opportunities where we have to have it done in a safe and healthy way. But if we can make sure that our schools are safe and healthy, and if people go through training, then we're going to work hard to have different conditioning opportunities so that students can get outside, so that they can run, so that they can stay in shape. And I think this is the last slide for me. And then attendance, right? It will be documented every day, right? And that's going to be a little bit different. We were a little bit lenient with a lot of grace and compassion in the spring, but we are going to make sure that students engage every single day. Like it says, there'll be a campaign around this, but it will be documented every day, and students need to know that right now. Oh, I'm sorry. One more thing. Similarly to attendance, our grading system will be like it was before the spring, right? Where 70% are around formative and summative assessments and 30% are around classwork participation and homework. There's some discussion about what that 70% should be broken down to around the formative and summative assessments. This is no different, young people, than what it was before. And again, we're kind of having to go back to a little bit of the normal because in the end, your grades are going to count here. In the spring, you already had grades for 2 quarters and almost a full other third. So that ended up being your main grade. But as we start the year off, we're going to have to be a little bit more traditional with our grading, and students are going to have to document their progress. Dr. Santelises, I think you're taking it from here, or am I going with this as well?
Okay, so we have a lot of questions. Mr. Staten, do you have a plan for how we're going to move through these, sir? I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
We certainly do. I was talking on mute, still learning curve, adjusting to this as well. I think we're all learning, right?
I was going to say, much grace. I still do it as well. So it's all yours.
Yes, so thank you, Dr. S., and thank you, Chief John Davis, as well, for going through this presentation and giving us the overview of the educational recovery plan. This gives us a space where everyone starts at the same with the same information, the same knowledge, and the same foresight, so that we can go into the school year being proactive, being supportive, and being working collaboratively across all stakeholders. So thank you all for making that known to our young people as well. What we're going to do is begin our Q&A portion. And as of right now, through all of our social media platforms, we have tons of questions coming in. So this is our time where we want to hear directly from our young people. And how we're going to do this, we're going to encourage our audience to be joining us and give your comments, questions, and suggestions as well on the chat or comment section on the platform. And what we're going to do is, before we go into there, we're going to kick off our first question by presenting this question to one of our student panelists or representatives of City Schools, Student Board Commissioner Kyrie Sykes. And what we want to do is ask Commissioner Sykes as well. But prior to us getting to the first question, before we hear from our panel, there has been numerous focus groups, listening sessions, conveners to hear from our young people. And one of our leaders or school staff personnel that have been supportive and have been on the grounds talking to our young people have been Dr. Pena. Dr. Pena, before we begin the Q&A section, will you mind just giving us a quick synopsis of what you heard, what you've experienced, and what you gathered from our young people through the various platforms and conveners that we had since the end of school year leading up until this year?
Yes, sir, Mr. Rashad. Our young people were really excited about the work they had from the teachers. They felt the teachers really cared about them. It kind of follows what Dr. Santalisa and Chief Dave discussed a couple weeks ago about how students felt engaged with the students. That was real relevant in our focus groups. We had 3 different focus groups from the springtime that you and I, of course, led, among other staff members. Students were also excited about the laptop device system. They said there were little hiccups at times, but they felt they were able to get it without problems. And then if a brother or sister needed a laptop, it was real easy for them to get it, we amended our policy to support our families. Another focus group, it was really mixed. It followed the student survey where some wanted to come back in person on September and others wanted to stay home still. So we didn't really have a direct 100% yes, want to come back to school. It follows a lot of the student survey that our chiefs discussed a couple weeks ago. So we were really excited to hear their voices, but most of all, they enjoyed the small group setting and online learning, allowing the teachers to use small group and breakout rooms to help them connect with each other. That was really supportive, and they appreciated that. But most of all, our seniors, I must say, our seniors were of course, they were sad that they had to miss prom and other things like that. So they hope that next year there'll be some type of celebrations for the new seniors coming up. So we got to come up with some ideas of how we can support them so they can also be celebrated. But the focus groups, for the most part, really follow the survey results. Our young people are excited to be back. They do miss their students, but they also recognize that safety is first. Across all 3 focus groups that we had, they definitely believe students should wear masks, adults should wear masks. There should be cleaning materials and all those things available in our school system before we return back in person. So that's pretty much what we had, Rashad, and follows the trends that we saw. So we're excited to see our young people engage. And I know that for sure that we have a lot of great answers here from our cabinet here in today's presentation.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Pena. Thank you. And I know it's not an easy task to try to regurgitate or speak on behalf of our young people, but I know that you speak and with a mind of being supportive and engaging and intentional with them. So thank you for giving us that recap from the district level of what we heard from our young people. So without further ado, we have our first question that we're going to direct to our student board commissioner, Kyrie Sykes. So Commissioner Sykes, are you with us?
Yes, sir, I am.
Pleasure. Before I ask you the question, I want to give the opportunity to say thank you and congratulations on being our newly appointed school board commissioner. And I want to give you space to introduce yourself, to tell your audience, tell your peers who you are, what school you attend, what you're studying, and your aspirations for the future.
First of all, I'd like to say thank you, Mr. Staten. So everyone, my name is Kyrie M. Sykes. I am a student, 11th grade, rising 11th grade student at Paul Laurence Dunbar High School. I just want to say it's been an honor so far taking up this new opportunity. I know my aspirations in life for me is I want to get a PhD in educational leadership and policy. That's my ultimate goal. One of my top goals in life is for me to be the next U.S. Secretary of Education. That is like the thing that I'm pushing for. And I just want to say, if any students out there have any questions or need help, I'm always here. You can reach out to me through Instagram. I have Instagram. My name on Instagram is Chief_Sykes. Also, you can reach me through emails if you are connected with the emails. So if you need me, I'm here. Staff members, if you want to talk to get more insight on anything that's student related, I'm always here. And just want to say thank you.
It is a pleasure. Thank you as well. And I have seen you in your element, and I know you are one of our brightest young scholars, and I know that you're going to be very impactful and insightful to be a part of the board. So without further ado, my first question is you. As a rising junior at Dunbar High School, what are your thoughts on what city schools can do to better support our young people in returning back to school this school year? So what is your personal experience or opinions of what we can do as city schools to better support you and your peers?
So I think what we can do as a district, as you know, is a district that should be seen as one school who all follows one big goal. Our goal is to get everyone to graduation. I feel like with the pandemic and everything that's going on, to keep everyone safe, to begin the school year off virtually, students should really take this up, because if you're watching social media, if you're listening to the things that's going on, you see that in different states and different school districts, you see that, you know, things that we don't want to happen with our students are happening. You have students who are going to school and getting sick from that, and that's not what we really want. So I can say we can start off virtually, and then we can reevaluate the situation. If we feel like that the numbers are dropping, then maybe we can think about moving into our next, you know, I think it was the hybrid model we were talking about. So definitely just take your time, be gracious with what is going on, and when we do begin to do virtual learning, do not be afraid. Jump into it, just like if you were in school, because it's going to be rough. You're starting something new, but it'll all work out, definitely. Also, on top of that, I just want to say, once we do figure out everything that's going on, I just want students, just don't give up. It's not over. It's just not the end. We have so much more to complete, so much more to do. And I know that as a district and as schools that we can do it. I believe that we can do it. I know that you can do it. And I know that the goal is going to get done. So I just want to say to the students, don't feel discouraged. Don't be afraid to ask for help, because we're all here to support you. We're all here to support each other. And we're a district who's going to get to our goal. So I feel like that's what we all should do. So just keep pushing towards our goal and be grateful for what we do have right now, and be glad that we don't have to go back to school with the conditions that we're under.
That is, it's a pleasure and it's an honor to hear from you, and you are a prime example to let us know to think optimistically about our future, because we know that our young people are bright, they are ready, they're prepared to step into the plateau of leadership, to step into places of decision making. And I thank you for just being yourself and stepping into the role of school board commissioner as a student. So without further ado, we want to hear from your peers, Kyrie, as well. And we had tons of questions that are loading up on our social media accounts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to regurgitate some of the comments, questions, and things. And what we're going to do, we have district leaderships, other representatives across the district that is going to assist Dr. S and Chief John Davis in answering and providing clarity to some of the questions. So let's go to Facebook. And let's begin on Facebook from one of the questions that we heard from a parent who a son actually attends Patterson High School. His sister is starting there in the fall as well. So a daughter and a brother are starting school at Patterson High School. And their first question is, how will orientation look for their freshman student in high school? How would freshman orientations look this year? And I'll give it over to one of my colleagues to begin answering those questions.
Chief Davis, do you want to jump in with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Schools will have a ninth grade orientation before the school year begins. And so that will be the initial work that schools have. Ninth graders, without a doubt, are in any type of transition grade. The sixth graders, similarly to middle school, but ninth graders in high school, that transition is so very important. So students have to get used to their new schedule, their new principal, their new teachers, and we'll have something before the beginning of the year around that. But I want to say also, I think it's also not just before the year. I think extra attention will be paid to ninth graders during the year. So if attendance begins to drop off, or if grades start off in a negative way, then we've got to help students right away. If you remember, there was a slide in a discussion about student counseling. It is our counselors and it is our ninth grade teachers that will be working together to make sure students continually keep on track. Because if they can get to the 10th grade year, all of the research says they're going to graduate. But we got to get into that 10th grade year. So I appreciate that question, because it is first and foremost on our minds of our high school folks.
Thank you, Chief Davis. Thank you. Greatly appreciate that. I hope that assists with providing clarity. Our next question is from Facebook as well. And the question goes as, while we're in phase 2, will my high school teachers be my instructors if my parents choose that I remain virtual?
That's another really good question. And I'll say that we are working to have as few transitions as possible if we have to do that. If we can keep that virtual space similar, or excuse me, if we can keep that space similar if we go back hybrid, then that is what we want to do. But there is a chance we will have to make a change. Right now, I just want the young people to know that, yes, that relationship that you build with that teacher at the beginning is so very important, and we're going to try to keep that established. But if your parent does choose to go to a virtual academy, that's where we'll have to figure out if we can keep that relationship or not. And right now, we don't have a full answer on that.
Understood. Thank you for your transparency and clarity with that, Chief Davis. Our next question is coming from Instagram, which is the big elephant in the room. So I'll take this time for you, Dr. S, as well as Chief Davis, to reiterate this one question that I think that we got to drive home. I remember, Dr. S, you speaking with this slogan that really captivated myself when I heard you speak so passionately about the space that we're in, that schools may be temporarily closed, but our minds and our hearts to learning should remain open, right? And what the question is coming from, which I believe is the big question in itself, is from Instagram, and our young people ask, are we closed for the rest of the year? discuss what measures will be used to determining opening, right? So I know that you presented that in a PowerPoint, but if you can drive that home one more time to make it clear that the stance of reopening schools and what will be the determinants for that.
No, and I appreciate you really pulling that out, Rashad. What I would say is a couple of things. One, we are looking at what the health indicators are for our community when we make decisions about reopening fully in hybrid, or at least in being able to provide a hybrid option. We are working with the health commissioner. We are, Dr. DeRaza, we are working with scientists and medical professionals, again, at places like Morgan and Hopkins. And I will say this, what we are, even though we may not be able to fully return to school for a while, meaning all of us in a new normal, the way we want, there are things that are definitely going to be true. The first is, and I saw some of the comments from young people about, I'm stressed during virtual learning and, trying to connect and just what that means to be away from the physical building. Even when we are away from the building, one of the things that we have worked hard to do with your teachers, with your principals, is to make sure that we have better ways of connecting and supporting you going into the school year, even virtually. So what the orientation looks like, and what Chief Davis just responded to. Orientations in some cases have already begun, making sure that teachers feel more comfortable with live teaching, because we heard, from a number of young people that also, even in a virtual setting, is important. And then, to Rashad's point, any thinking about returning to buildings is going to include a readiness to be able to provide all of those measures, from masks to social distancing, and whether it is having a small group of, say, 5 or 10 students, like one or two of our high schools did this summer, and some of our K-8 and elementaries, to a full A-Day, B-Day or back. One of the things that I know we're committed to, both staff, board, and teachers and principals, is really to making sure that those safety measures are in place, and that we, regardless of how many folks are ready to return, we know that for a lot of young people, they can't wait until we are all kind of fully back in. So we don't know what it's going to look like yet, because we are watching the health indicators. We're hoping that in the latter month of September and October, we can at least bring some small groups back and see where we are. But everything right now is really dependent on what the health indicators are. We'll post what some of those are. We know that we have a decision. I saw some questions about sport. We have some decisions that have been made both at the state level and the local level, that we will postpone fall sports. What we are hoping for, fall and winter, what we are hoping for is a compressed season in spring, and that what we can do is have really short seasons and then move through that, so that we give, as many student athletes as possible the ability to have some playing in competition time. But this is a challenging piece, and we really are going by what the health conditions are and how safely we can return what proportion of students back safely. And that's what the driver is. So Rashad, do you think that answers the question, or did I leave something out? Or Commissioner Sykes, does that answer the question, do you think?
Yeah,
yes, ma'am. I think you hit it right on the nose.
Okay, good. You're my litmus test, sir. So I'm keeping track.
Got it. And Chief Davis, did you want to add to that question?
Yeah, just real quickly, I spoke to a couple of high school teachers, and I think sometimes when we make announcements on the district level, sometimes it's not perceived in the way that we would want it to. And so we've made announcements that we will come back in October and talk about if we can come back in person for some hybrid model. And I think young people may hear that and say, oh, we're not really starting for real until October. That is not the case. And I need everyone to understand that. We start for real on September 8th. And I want everyone to know that, yes, we want people to come back the same way that Dr. Santelisa's just talked about those relationships and making sure, especially on the middle school and high school end, where you've got sports and extracurriculars, we want that. But school does start on September 8th. We'll give an update in October about if we can go back. But I need all the young people to talk to their friends, to talk to the kids that they know and say, no, no, no. The first day of school is September 8th. It's online and they need to be there.
Awesome. Thank you both for that. The next question we're going to ask is coming both from Instagram and Facebook, but they're pertaining to schedules, right? So one is coming from our Facebook and Instagram, in which young person is asking, will they be able to pick the classes in the time they go, and how would scheduling look like for high school students that may have a 7-period schedule? I know that's very, very particular, but if you can give us a synopsis of general schedule framing.
Yep. Can you say that one more time, Rashad?
Will students be able to pick classes in the time for their classes, and how would the schedule look like for students in previous years that may have had a 7-period class or course?
Yep. So the first one, yes, schools that have always had students be able to pick specific classes, right? Sometimes you have to take classes for graduation requirements, but sometimes you have some electives that you can choose from. And so if you've been able to do that in the past, that's exactly how it should be now. At the same time, yes, the scheduling model that we show is usually a 5-period day. When you get to a 7 and 8-period day, a lot of schools will probably go to an A day and a B day, where half their classes will be on Monday and half the classes will be on Tuesday. Those classes might be a little bit longer, but when you get to 7-period days, that looks like how.
Got it. Thank you for that. Now, the next question that we have is coming from Instagram, and there was a question around staffing, school support staffing. Will additional staff be hired at schools to support with the hybrid cohort modules?
Does that question mean once we move to hybrid, or does that also mean small groups? Because what I would say is when we move into hybrid, or hybrid would also mean that we're ready for some staff to return to buildings as well. In the virtual space with small groups, very similar to what we did this summer, we'll actually be working with a variety of we actually have some folks from community groups that are volunteering as well. So we do have the additional supports. It's just around, it's just around what the need is of whether it's physical or whether it's virtual.
Understood. Thank you. Thank you. Our next question is coming from particular to from Instagram, and it asks exactly this. So will schools still host IEP meetings for students? Will IEP meetings still be held for students?
Yes.
And if so, how, where, and when to expect?
Yes. Yep. IEP meetings will be held with a combination of virtual meetings as well as small in-person, as the conditions allow. One of the things we are trying to do is for small group in-person, prioritize students with IEPs and IEP meetings as some of the first priorities to occur even in small groups at schools. But then we'll have a combination.
Thank you. Thank you for providing that clarity. The next question is coming from Facebook as well. Let's start with this one. This one's coming from YouTube. The first question we had from YouTube. Will there be additional staff for cleaning? And what is the cleaning procedures and expectations around cleaning? So healthy and safety measures.
Yes, one of the things that we committed to, and I had a discussion even today about it, is that as we have more students and staff returning to school buildings, we will absolutely make sure that we have additional custodial support queued up for those buildings, particularly those that have been more challenging to keep clean. While we are in the virtual space, that clearly won't be necessary immediately, but yes, we have clued that up. And Rashad, is it okay if I read out one of the kind of recurring themes that I'm seeing as well? Is that all right if I do that? So one of the things I keep seeing is comments from young people about those who don't like the online school. And comments from young people who are saying, look, it's stressful. I don't like being in front of a screen all day. And so what are the supports that we are building around that will make that experience feel different or at least better? Ideally, we all want to be back in schools tomorrow, but knowing that we can't, what are we actually doing about it? And I will say, as a mother of 3 daughters, one of my city school students did not do well with distance learning either. And she had a very similar attitude to some of what I have seen in the chat. So I think it would be helpful if we could get some quick commentary from some of the folks who've been working on this quickly about a couple of things that we're doing that we feel will better support students in the virtual space.
Awesome. Thank you. And I want to just take a moment to let our audience, that our viewers, family, students, parents, and partners that are on, that we are reading and we're trying to get as many questions answered that are coming through our various platforms, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. So we're going to continue on with the questions, and we're trying to be mindful of time as well. So just be patient with us. Thank you for your understanding, and we'll try our best to get as many questions as we can while we still have the duration of time during this recording. So our next question: how will students who don't have the best resources or help at home be able to stay connected on all of their work? Again, how will students who don't have the best resources or help at home be able to stay connected on all of their work? And how would they get the supports that they need if they do not understand the work and tips from their teachers, or cannot get the assistance from their teachers?
Hi, this is Janice Lane, Executive Director of Teaching and Learning. One of the things that we continue to focus on is the connection that students have with their teachers. So in all of the schedules across all grade levels, there are opportunities for office hours or small group instruction, so that as students need clarity around, an assignment or just some coaching with that will be available to them throughout the day. We will also continue line set up as we did in the spring, so families can reach in and reach to that line, or students, depending upon what the issue is that they're looking for support with. And then finally, we're also looking at various tutoring structures to be able to offer across grade levels, so that if a student is struggling, let's just say in mathematics, when may there be other students available that could either be college tutors or partners across the district that can support that work. So we're really looking at not just what is the core instruction, but what are the wraparound supports that we can ensure that students feel confident, families feel confident, and how we do that work together.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Thank you for that clarity and in-depth answer. Our next question, now let's stay on grading and testing. How will grading be made, as well as to, will there be standardized testing during this time of virtual learning? How are grades being recorded, and will there be standardized tests during virtual learning?
I can hit the standardized test piece and then turn it over to our colleagues from the CCR office. So standardized testing, we will be using some testing with our students. Really, the testing that we're going to be doing is helping inform teachers around what students need in their instruction. So looking at some of the resources that you heard earlier, Chief Davis mentioned iReady. So ways that we can do a quick analysis with students, as well as daily checks for understanding within the class, so that teachers know how to support students in small groups or what kind of follow-up can be done there. So we'll be utilizing those resources as part of the instructional day with our teachers. And I'm not sure if someone from the CCR team wants to pick up on grading.
Sure, I'll pick up. So we're going to follow the same grading policy that we followed in the fall. We're going to do a lot more support with teachers to determine, effective ways to grade and support students through that grading process. So we're going to continue with that. I also wanted to add on with testing. I know one of the questions was about PSAT and SAT. And so we're working with College Board to figure out how PSAT and SAT can be administered. If not in the fall, we're looking to see what we can do in the spring. So we are definitely actively working on both the SAT side, PSAT side, and also supporting the college access and making sure that our teachers are supported with the training related to grading students effectively.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you all for answering these questions. So I want to take time to be reflective as well, and to note that we have some themes that are popping up across our platforms: teacher engagement, grading, and supports. And with that, I want to lead to the next question. But before I lead to the next question, there was a comment or a question around, will this presentation be available for others to view later? This presentation that the CEO, Dr. Santelises, and Chief John Davis went over can be found on the district website. So if you would like to see the presentation and read it through on your own leisure, your own time, please go to the district website to find those PowerPoint presentation that was shared today during our live convening. The next question, that's around supports, which is one of the things that we're hearing from our young people. We had a young person that commented that they do not like online learning, or online school is stressful and annoying, sitting and looking at a screen all day. So with this comment that one of our young people shared, and thank you for being transparent and sharing your voice, the follow-up question that came from their peers is, how are we attempting to prevent the learning curve that students will be facing with virtual online learning? What are we doing to prevent the learning curve or address the learning curve that our young people are facing?
So I can jump in and start with that. Basically, what we've done has really been spent time listening, not only to teachers, but really to students. We just had a design camp last week where we created some best practice guides for teachers that were influenced not only by teachers, but from students, addressing this very issue around screen time, around expectations, and the ways that we can engage students. So we're working with our teachers when they come back from summer break for professional development to think about, how do you engage deeply with students beyond the content? So what are some of the SEL supports or the wholeness supports that we do, where you take breaks in between and have purposeful opportunities where students can connect with one another, have conversations in deep process together around that work. So really looking at beyond just a screen time, what can that learning look like? And again, ties back to the question that I answered just a few minutes ago, that we're really using assessment data to drive what happens in the classroom, so that students don't feel like they're just doing online learning, but that they're really doing something that is engaging and meaningful to them. And then finally, I would say continuing to collect student voice. This is really new for all of us. So we'll be holding forums throughout the implementation to see how we can change or shift based on the experience from what you engage with, what your teachers are engaging with. So continue to provide that feedback for us. We really want to make sure that what we're designing and planning meets the needs of our students.
Awesome. Thank you for that as well. So thank you for providing that clarity. Dr. Ash, you had something?
Yeah, I did just want to say one of the other things that I think is, kind of standard practices that we are looking to particularly help young people for whom online learning just is not, is not the best form of them going to school. And one is providing more kind of one-on-one check-ins with other adults and staff at your school. We know there are some schools that are organizing around folks having, having the ability to check in with students one-on-one, because some students do better with that in a virtual space. Others have virtual learning. We know that going straight, I know myself, I don't do well in just kind of straight 5 hours of Zoom meetings and no break. And even a 20-minute break in between really does help in helping me stay focused much more. The other piece is making sure that we are incorporating, as I think some folks said earlier, just those times to check in. We officially call it SEL, but from a student perspective, it really is about how do I have time just to connect to other young people, to my teachers, without just running from block to block around my classes, but actually have those times to check in, having virtual office hours. I know many of our high schools are talking about having just a counseling and a guidance portion of the week where young people and families can check in. So I did want to just add that we have worked on making sure that there are flexibilities and pockets of time in the schedule for young people to connect with adults in either small group or one-on-one, because there are things that you'll say there, ways you're able to connect there that will feel different than just sitting in front of a camera or watching a Zoom class all day. So I just wanted to add that. Rashad, are you speaking?
I'm speaking to myself. But I'm back here. We're gonna focus on the YouTube questions. Our young people are very active on the YouTube right now. We want to give space for them. One of the questions is around the hybrid model and what the school year will look like as far as hallway transitioning. What would the transition as far as hallway and going to classes look like for these young people? And this is coming from some comments off of our YouTube.
For the most part, we would work so that there are as few transitions as possible. So for instance, ninth graders a lot of times take many of the same classes. That may not be the case with 12th and 11th graders, but with ninth graders, they take many of the same classes. So we could keep them often in the same class. We don't want to do that all the time, because sitting in the same class for an adolescent usually doesn't make sense, but we will try to do that as much as possible. And we'll do that on the middle school and elementary school as well. In the end, kids kind of have to stay together to be as safe as possible, and we should be able to do that. I think when you get into the upper level high school courses, it'll be a little bit more difficult, and we will have to have guidelines about what a transition looks like.
Got it, Chief Davis. Thank you as well. Our next question, well, the young person answered that when those are speaking to just have your cameras on, so we acknowledge that. Thank you for lifting that up as well. Our young person then had questions around CTE and extracurriculars. What about students that have trades for classes? How would that look? Our young people that are in our CTE programming and other specific educational programs, how would that look for them?
So in terms of CTE, We want to make sure that we continue to support our CTE students. So we have the interventions on Wednesday, so to try to build in additional support. I know there's support around students being prepared for their certification exams. We are working on building CTE kits for some of our students because, we know that students need that hands-on experience. And so we're working on those components, and we're working with our CTE teachers to make sure that they are fully trained and feel supported to deliver a strong CTE curriculum to make sure that our students are able to pass those certification assessments and then and be successful in their career endeavors.
I would add a little bit to that. Thanks, Mavis, that if we were to bring back small groups of students, CTE students should be considered as well. And so, if we transition in kind of a slow way where we bring back kids slowly, I mean, those CTE students have got to have some real experiences, and I think we would want to bring them back first.
Awesome, Chief Davis. Thank you as well, and thank you, Dr. Jackson, as well. What I want to then move towards is another question that is coming from our young people on Instagram. How will students who need additional support receive it online, such as students who are diagnosed or identified with ADHD and other learning spaces?
So good evening. This is Deborah Brooks, Executive Director of Special Education, and that's an excellent question. So just as those students, if they have an IEP or a 504 plan, have accommodations and modifications, those accommodations will be implemented. So if the student has a break that's identified on their plan, they will be afforded that break, even in the virtual space. If they have additional support via an additional adult, then we are going to be utilizing our paraprofessionals and other adults to be able to provide that additional support for that student in that virtual space. Those accommodations that are identified on that student's plan, again, via an IEP or a 504 plan, will be implemented to support the student in the virtual space, just as they would have been provided those supports in school. And again, just once it's safe to begin to bring students back, we would be looking to bring back those students that need those additional supports into a smaller learning environment.
Thank you for lifting that up. We're going to continue on as we're getting closer to time, and I want to be respectful of that. Thank you, young people, for listening up to questions. Again, we are doing our best to try to address every question and try to dig deeper with those. Our next question that I wanted to lift up is, how are we all making the language something that students are used to? Many students don't know what the language that we're using means. What are we doing to take time out to explain certain terms that we are using? What are we going to do around language sensitivity and understanding?
It's a great question, and I would say that's why we start off a lot of our presentations with saying what asynchronous and synchronous means, right? Yes, it is new. Yes, it is not any person's normal language. I don't even think it's adults' normal language, if you want to know the truth. But in the end, right, they're new words, and we have to talk about synchronous being live in front of someone, right? Asynchronous being independent. So just like any good classroom where you take new words, you want to connect them to words that people already know and just use them as much as possible. So I think we have to do that more and more. We've been trying to model that as we have these town halls and as we talk to staff and students and families, but I think teachers are going to have to do that as well. It's a great question and it's a great flag.
Awesome. Thank you, Chief Davis. We're going to stay on this topic, which is the very theme around scheduling and what the school experience will look like if we get to a space where we can return with a hybrid model. How would the classes look? Will students be returning for certain days out of the week, or will they be returning for a full week of learning as well, in addition to well, the young person is asking, will there be half and half days? Will there be few days or through a whole weekend learning? can you reiterate and provide more clarity of what that school year will look like within that hybrid model?
Sure. In the hybrid model, students would come to school twice a week, right? It would be generally about half the class on, say, Monday or Thursday, or maybe Tuesday and Friday. They would be given asynchronous assignments. Again, asynchronous being doing something independent of the teacher and doing on their own on the days that they're off. And the days that they're at home, they would also be having different check-ins with other staff members within a school. There'd be a lot of different opportunities that we will lift up when students are at home to go along with the teaching that occurs when they're in school. So again, think of it generally like half the students are in school, class sizes are about half, and you go to school about half of the days, about twice a week.
Got it. Now, the next question is around extracurriculars and athletics in particular. Some of our young people have noted that athletics allow them to pursue other opportunities in the future, particularly college and things of that sort. Them not having this opportunity to play this year, how would that affect them? How is that going to affect them, and what supports are we providing with them missing the opportunity to be a part of athletic activities?
John, you're on mute.
Yeah, that is another great question. I feel like as a parent of a senior and who wasn't able to play baseball last year and may not be able to play it this year, it is heartbreaking. And I think when I get asked the question, what supports are we going to put in place? I go back to what Dr. Santelises said, which was hopefully we can do it all in the spring, even if they are shortened schedules. I think the other thing we're trying to lift up is, can we do conditioning throughout the year in a safe way? So at least teams can get together and they can work out a little bit. I can't promise it yet because we've got to do it in a safe way, but we do want to get kids together and have them work out. I mean, part of the issue with the virus is if students are staying at home, they're frankly just not getting enough movement and activity. And the lack of sports and the lack of extracurriculars is another thing that kind of keeps us up. So we want to figure out if we can do some type of conditioning and support our students in that way.
So happy to see you.
Awesome. Thank you, Chief Davis. And I know it's not easy as it may seem on the other end, knowing the realities and trying to be supportive and mindful of all the different movement parts, right? There's other questions that are lighting up right now young people are passionate about. So athletics was one, and another one is around the school choice process. Can someone give us more in depth of what school choice selection and process looks like for this year?
Good evening, everybody. This is Tina Highcover, Chief of Communications, Engagement, and Enrollment. I am offering today, we're doing a revamping of our school choice process. We are going to have to reconfigure what the choice formula looks like, understanding that we cannot do the same thing we did in the last school year because we had virtual learning this spring. So we're going to get back to you as soon as we have the new model figured out. But I will also offer, we will not be hosting our choice fair in person. That will be a virtual online experience for students to experience. We will get more information again to you, but we're going to do a virtual choice process online, and you will have an outline of what the new formula will look like in September. We promise that for you.
Thank you, Chief Hubbard. Thank you as well for your transparency and providing what we do know as of right now for the school choice fair. I hope that provided a little bit more clarity for those young people that lifted this question up, so we know the urgency and the importance of school choice and processes as well. The other one that we're getting is around transportation. What does transportation look like? Is there additional supports, or has there been a change in direction and strategy? And how are we providing transportation assistance to our young people during the times of virtual and even when we possibly transition to the hybrid model? How would transportation look like, and what are the safety and health measures and precautions that are in line to our transportation strategy.
So if we don't have anybody on for that, I can certainly take that question, Rashad. So one, with regard to transportation, we have a series of protocols that we've been putting in place around sanitizing, regular sanitizing of our yellow buses, distance and masks for students who are riding buses. We've been working with some of our drivers this summer. Summer school was actually a great test run. I want to say a big thank you to families in the one or two instances where we might have had students who were playing around with their masks. I have to tell you, that stopped. And we had a lot of family support around that. We had a lot of student support, distance within the bus in terms of our yellow buses. I also want to say that one thing we need to continue to work on, and we have been working with some of our elected officials, city council members, members of the delegation. One of the challenges, as a number of our high school students know, is MTA. And the challenge there is just the number of routes that they are running while the social distancing is in place. So we know, and this is, again, I want to reiterate, we're starting the school year virtually. So one of the things we're working on with MTA is making sure that they are running enough buses, and we don't, we only have oversight over the yellow buses, but we've really been pushing for them not to cut the routes. We have young people probably on this call who were part of the effort to extend the time on the bus passes. We're going to need kind of similar advocacy. So whenever we are ready to open up the school for, coming in person, a couple of days, when we are ready to do that, we're going to have to make sure that MTA has routes. So that's the place where I have the biggest concerns right now. But in terms of our yellow school buses, we found this summer, we had a lot of success with our cleaning protocols, with our mask protocols, and working with our drivers. And the regular sanitizing, there's a question, I think, from YouTube. What does regular sanitizing mean? Regular sanitizing means like after each route, right? So not once a week, twice a week. It means using the cleaners that the Center for Disease Control has said kill the virus, literally going through every single bus, every single seat with all of the staff, and making sure everything is wiped down, making sure windows are open, making sure there's air, sterilization. So, and there's a full protocol if you all want to see that. But basically, we are cleaning those buses after every single route a couple times a day. And so that's what the sanitizing means. It means using cleaner that we know kills the virus, that the CDC has approved, and making sure we are wiping down every part of the bus at least a couple of times a day and between all the routes.
Got it. Thank you, Dr. S, for that. And while we're still on transportation and that safety measurements for that, one of our young people provided a suggestion, and they wanted to get our stance on this. Have we discussed partnerships with Uber and Lyft to assist in the transportation assistance? And if so, and if not, and if so, how can young people be involved in this discussion or possible partnership around transportation? Great question.
Okay. I'll take that one, Dr. S.
Right.
So, yep, we are working with a partnership actually with Uber and Lyft to provide rides for immunizations, getting to our meal sites and other needed items. We can't give them out to students, unfortunately, because the codes have to be used for people who are 18 and over. So our oldest students maybe, but families can actually access the codes for these. Our community schools coordinators will be providing those codes at school sites. And so if a family is in need of an Uber or a Lyft ride, we actually have developed a partnership with them, and we are able to give out codes to families.
Chief. Awesome, Chief. Thank you for addressing that question as well and providing even more clarity. We're towards the latter end of our today's programming and Youth Town Hall. And I must say, I'm excited to hear from our young people. They've been asking questions that are of a variety of value and utter importance. And I wanted to give space before one in particular. Before we close out with hearing closing remarks from School Board Commissioner McFadden and from you, Dr. S., before we wrap up, one of our young people asked a question about the realities of large student to teacher ratio and if there's a possible hybrid model to be reduced down to 10 to 20 students. How does social distancing look in a classroom with their 10 to 20 students, which is even a smaller reduction of students in a classroom itself? What does that look like?
Absolutely. And I saw that as well, Rashad, and I'm glad you lifted that question up. When we say A day, B days, when we say half, know that our operations team, our schools team has looked at every school. So that means schools, particularly our larger high schools, as well as some of our larger kindergarten through 8th grade schools that we know there might be 35, 40 students in a class. It means we're having to look for additional space. It does not mean that we're going to try to jam 20 students in a room where we can't do social distancing. So I'm glad that you lifted that up. We know that, and those are the schools that if and when we do, I should say when, I won't say if, but when, even if it's months and months from now, we actually are able to open in person in that hybrid model. We are looking into additional spaces. We're looking into tents when the weather is good, so that, for example, students might be, able to take their meals outside. We're not there yet because we are starting all virtual, but that's an excellent question. And just know, we heard from parents and students this summer that where they were comfortable were places where we could have 10 and under in a classroom. And so parents were very clear with us that if they had looked into classrooms and saw 15 or 20 children, with the teacher in a classroom, the teachers would not have felt comfortable, the parents and families would not have felt comfortable, and the students would not have felt comfortable. So we know the places where we have large classes, and we are prioritizing those schools for additional spaces. So thank you, Rashad. I'm glad you lifted that up because that's important.
No problem. Thank you. Thank you as well. We're doing our best again. Thank you for our young people in our audience and stakeholders across our school communities, students, families, parents, educators, school partners, and all those that care for our young people educational experience. And we're coming towards the latter end. Again, young people that you were not able to have your your questions answered. I want to make sure that you all know that the comments, suggestions, and questions that you all have shared through all social media platforms are being recorded and are being tracked, and we will do our best to try to answer them and provide those solutions through other platforms, i.e. either City Schools website or our other platforms in addressing these questions. And there'll be other culminating discussions as we go throughout the school year to keep you all abreast, informed, and up to date of what's going on, because you all deserve to be a part of the decision making and to be abreast to all that is being discussed that has a direct impact on your educational experience. Without further ado, I want to give the space and opportunity to hear from a champion of education, a champion of our young people, an educator himself. This gentleman, again, is our board commissioner, Commissioner McFadden. I know you sat here for a while listening, being attentive, and just being purposeful, right? I'm curious to see what sentiments do you want to share with your young people, suggestions, and any encouraging words of supports that you want to provide to us all, and not just the young people, but the school community. Thank you, sir.
Yes, to the school community, but particular to our young people. I think that is the point of us having this town hall today. And what I've been trying to do is navigate devices to pay attention to YouTube, right? To Instagram, to Facebook, to Twitter. And there are a lot of voices there. And I noticed myself trying to decipher through, students versus the adults that are there. And I appreciate everyone's comment, but I was just, just stuck on a lot of what the young people were saying, and particularly I'll call some of them out. Camry, I saw some of your comments. Kayla, Xavier, especially Xavier, you've emailed me several times throughout the course of the summer. Christopher, Natasha, and what I will say, as we all know, that in a system of almost 80,000 young people, right? 80,000 students, on top of their parents and their guardians and all of the people that love them. We want to hear from as many of you as possible, but this can't be the only opportunity, right? There are several outlets, there are several ways to stay connected. And what I'll do, and most of the young people that have been communicating with me already know, to email me, and I'm going to get back to you, right? I'm going to respond to you. And if I don't have answers, I'm going to do my best to make sure that the people that do have those answers are able to respond to you and your families. And so I'll just put it out there. It's all on the website. But my email address is rsmcfadden, RSMCFADDEN, at bcps.k12.md.us. I know we weren't able to get to everyone's comments, but send me an email. I want to hear from you, and we all want to hear from you all, because that is the nature of the business that we do. The questions that were not necessarily answered tonight, Chief Hike Hubbard has said that we're going to post those questions to the website in addition to the answers to the website. But I want you all to know, everyone to know right now, right, that school is not closed. Even though our buildings are shut down, right? Even though our buildings are not as accessible as they once were, school is not closed, and we're going back into school, and we're doing our best to figure out ways to make sure that we're meeting the needs of all of the folks that are involved in this organization called City Schools. And will we get it right all the time? No, right? Are we going to do our best to try to figure out ways to do things better? Absolutely. And it's important that we all continue to work together to make sure that all of our needs are met. Young people, I want you to know that the outcome is still the same. You will learn, you will grow. You have a community of folks around you that love you and that support you. And this is a challenging time for all of us. The outcome is still the same, right? Even though the environments may be different, even though the settings might not be ideal, even though we're going to have to make some sacrifices, because we can't control this viral terrorist, right? COVID-19 is a horrible situation that has happened to us, and we can't control that. But what we can control is how we love you all, how we support you all, how we're here for you all, and how we listen to you all. So I'm saying all of that to say the outcome is still the same. I know that there will be challenges. We're going to work through those, right? If you have continuous concerns, right? If you need help with technology, if you need help, with the tutor, if you need whatever help you need, whatever resource, let us know, right? It's important that we move from a place, and it's challenging. It's tough to do, right? There are often more complaints and problems than it seems like solutions, right? But it's important for us to do our best to work together and to listen. So I appreciate City School staff for creating this outlet for us to have conversation with our young people, and we've got to do more of it. Right? We got to make this a consistent practice so that we're constantly hearing from you. I know it's tough. I know a lot of you were saying that it was you were typing, right? And you wanted us to hear your voices. And that's important, right? And that is a challenge for us to do in a virtual setting. So we're figuring that out. And it's important that we are all extended, as Dr. Santelises and a lot of folks often say, extend that grace, right? Because it's not going to be right initially, but we're working to figure it out so that we can meet the needs of everyone. So I just want everyone to be mindful of that. And Mr. Pena has said, yes, we're one Baltimore, we're one vision, and we are one team City Schools. So I want to thank everyone that's been on. I want to encourage you all to continue to send your questions to all of us, the board. We want to hear from you, right? We're not like just out like on an app. We want to hear from you, right? Your voices, your thoughts, they matter and they drive our work. So it's important that we continue to hear from you. Young people, I want you to continue to rest up. I want you to continue to stay safe, to stay healthy, make responsible decisions on your own. Let us know what you need so that we can support you. But get ready. We're getting ready to go back into some teaching and learning. And the hope is for it to be high quality, right? The outcome will still be the same. So there is uncertainty, but just know that you have a lot of people that are here to support you, that love you, and are committed to making sure that you thrive and succeed, not just now, but tomorrow and the future. So thanks, everyone.
Hey, thank you, Commissioner McFadden. Always hearing you, you can tell you're a man of purpose and distinction. So thank you for always being service and oriented and mindful as a person and as a leader for the district. I want to give our last comments and words from our leader, Dr. Santelises. Do you have any lasting remarks and sentiments that you want to share to our young people and our school community?
Well, I will just say, I think Commissioner McFadden had the most powerful close, and so I don't want to trip up the powerful message that he left young people and students with. And just thank him again for that. I want to thank the full team for being here. And most important, for the young people who were real. Your comments tonight as they were coming through, and I too was watching, reminded me what I miss most about being the CEO of City Schools. And that is being close to students who are real, who say what you mean, who express what you are really experiencing, and actually, everything from, the language you're using is not language that, is accessible to me and my friends and my classmates. And your feedback helps us get better. So one of the commitments that I am making this evening is that this will not be the last town hall focused on students, focused on young people. And then the second commitment that I make this evening is that at those upcoming town halls, we will have no more than one slide with summary information, and then we will devote truly the majority of the time to hearing from you all, from your questions. We will continue to be real. Where we have answers, we'll share the answers, and where we don't, we will tell you that we don't. But I appreciate all the young people in Baltimore. I appreciate you being real. I appreciate you helping us get better. And it is absolutely, I loved when Commissioner McFadden said school is not closed. Virtual, hybrid, in person, we are not closed. Your learning is what we are focused on, your well-being, and making sure that we help you through this period, because we know you only get to go to school once. And so we are really working to make sure that that is true. So thank you. This will not be the last time. Again, thank you to staff. We have an upcoming family town hall this week. And we will, get to see a lot of the adults or family members who might not have had your questions prioritized tonight. But we will commit to making sure that we, even in that town hall, leave the overwhelming majority. Like I said, we're going to have a one slide rule where we'll have a summary slide, and then we will spend the majority of the time just taking your questions. So thank you all for this evening, and really appreciate you being out.
Again, thank you, Dr. S. Thank you for all the colleagues and district leadership for joining us, to being accessible, being transparent, and being your true selves in front of our young people in our school community. Thank you all as well for providing that insight and information so that our young people feel as though that they're in the know and they're being respected of their time and how they're going to be supported academically and support as a whole person. As you all heard through our leadership and others that are online, this is one of many. The questions, comments, and questions that were not lifted up today will be lifted up and respected and honored and recognized on our district platforms and websites so that you all can go back in your leisure and get more clarity and answers towards what you have questions around. Again, this is one of many, and the next ones, as Dr. S said, will not be information sharing focused, but to hear directly from you all so that we can be mindful of going in the right direction and the next steps along with you rather than for you. Again, young people, I want to say and reiterate the fact that our schools may be temporarily closed, but our learning is not. Our minds should always be open to learn more, to grow more, and be supportive of each other and our peers. As I always close out for the Youth Town Hall, as we always do, that you as young people, you're not just up next, you're up now. And the city school has space for you to be a part of decision-making tables, to be a part of school decision-makings on site and within your school communities. So always use voice, always represent yourselves well, and always be impactful and ready to make a change. Again, this is the Youth Town Hall. Thank you all for joining us. Remember to stay mindful, stay healthy, stay safe. City Schools is here in support of you all. We believe in you all, and we're looking forward to a prosperous and a successful academic school year, despite the circumstances that we're in. Remember to be more. Let's be more together as a community, and let's close the distance. Thank you all for joining us for the Youth Town Hall, one of many more to come. Continue to look on social media platforms. I am Rashad Staten, Youth Engagement Specialist. It has been a pleasure. Young people, we want to hear more from you all. Tell us how you felt about today's town hall, and we look forward to hearing from you all soon. Y'all stay safe, y'all stay healthy, y'all stay blessed. And what we'll do is provide other student opportunities on the district website under the student tab so that you can continue to add voice to what is being discussed and next steps and strategies for the district. So continue to reach out to us through all social media platforms. Use your student tab, and let's all stay engaged. Let's all stay connected. Let's all be purposeful, and let's all be healthy. Thank you all. Have a great day. Enjoy the rest of your week. And we look forward to having you all join us again.